All right, let's get right into it. We're heading back to 1980 to a remote patch of desert in Iran. This is where one of the boldest, most complicated, and most disastrous special ops missions in modern history went down. We're talking about Operation Eagle Claw, a high-stakes gamble that just went horribly wrong.
I mean, think about that for a second. How on earth does a sandstorm take down a superpower? It just sounds almost made up, right? The most advanced military on the planet, with all its tech and elite soldiers, brought to a standstill by bad weather? Well, as you're about to find out, it's way more complicated than just one freak storm.
So, before we can even get to the mission itself, we gotta understand why it was even necessary. And for that, you have to rewind the clock a bit. Because, before 1979, the US and Iran, they weren't enemies. Not at all. In fact, they were pretty tight allies, all thanks to oil and a common enemy in the Soviet Union. And the guy in charge of Iran back then? Shah Reza Pahlavi.
And this really gets to the heart of the problem. You see, the Shah, who had major backing from the US, kicked off something he called the White Revolution. Basically, it was this huge push to modernize the country, make it more Western. But for a whole lot of religious Iranians, this wasn't progress at all. It felt like a direct attack on their culture, their faith, their entire way of life. And those tensions were about to explode.
And explode they did. You can trace it all back. It really started in 1953 with a CIA-backed coup that cemented the Shah's power. Then public anger just kept building, especially after a ridiculously extravagant party he threw in 1971. But the real breaking point? 1978. Black Friday. The Shah's troops opened fire on protesters. After that, there was no going back. By January 79, the Shah had to flee the country for good. And just a month later, the exiled Ayatollah Khomeini comes back, and millions of people are in the streets to greet him. This was the birth of a brand new, revolutionary Iran.
Now, all of this could have just been Iran's internal business. But one decision, made thousands of miles away in Washington, D.C., turned this whole thing into a massive international crisis. The one that directly led to Operation Eagle Claw. And here it is, the trigger. The exiled Shah was dying of cancer, and President Jimmy Carter, seeing it as a humanitarian issue, lets him come to the United States for medical treatment. To the revolutionaries in Iran, this was just the ultimate slap in the face. They saw it as America protecting the very tyrant they had just overthrown. It confirmed everything they believed, that the U.S. was the great Satan. And the blowback was instant. On November 4th, 1979, a mob of radical students, totally furious about Carter's decision, swarmed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. They just poured over the walls, took over the entire compound, and captured 52 American diplomats and citizens. They were now hostages. And their demand couldn't have been clearer. Send us the Shah to face trial and you get your people back. Simple as that. But for the U.S., there was no way that was going to happen. And just like that, the standoff was on. And this wasn't just a standoff that lasted a few days. We're talking about an agonizingly long crisis. Day after day, week after week, it was all over the news, every single night. In the end, those 52 Americans were held captive for a staggering 444 days. Can you even imagine an absolute eternity? Okay, so months are dragging on, diplomacy is going nowhere, and the pressure on President Carter is just immense. He felt like he had to act. So he greenlit a top-secret, incredibly risky military rescue operation. Its code name, Operation Eagle Claw. And on paper, wow, it was one of the most complicated things ever drawn up.
All right, you really need to understand how complex this plan was because it's key to why it all fell apart. So, step 1. A bunch of C-130 planes and 8 heavy-lift helicopters were going to sneak into Iran and land at this remote spot in the middle of nowhere called Desert 1. Then, step 2. The choppers would fly a team of elite commandos to a secret hiding spot near Tehran. The next night, step 3, the commandos hit the embassy, grab the hostages, and get them to a soccer stadium. Step 4, the choppers swoop into the stadium, pick everyone up, and fly them back to Desert One. And finally, step 5, everybody piles into the C-130s and flies out to freedom. I mean, so many moving pieces, so many things that had to go perfectly right. And, well, almost from the get-go, things started to go catastrophically wrong. This is the moment where this beautifully complex plan smashed headfirst into reality. The mission was literally falling apart before the commandos even got close to Tehran. It all started with 8 of these massive helicopters, RH-53D Sea Stallions, launching from the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz out in the ocean. Now, the mission planners did the math. They figured they needed an absolute minimum of 6 choppers to pull this thing off, so 8 gave them a little bit of a cushion, a margin for error. Yeah, about that margin for error, it disappeared. Fast. Right away, one helicopter has to turn back with a cracked rotor blade. Then another one has a major hydraulic leak and has to drop out. And if that wasn't bad enough, the remaining 6 fly straight into a monster sandstorm that nobody saw coming, a haboob. One more helicopter gets lost in the chaos and has to abort. By the time the survivors land at Desert One, there are only 5. 5. They were already below the minimum number needed to even try. With only 5 birds on the ground, the mission was dead. The commander on site makes the only call he can. He radios the president and tells him they have to abort. It's over. But the nightmare? Oh, it was just getting started. Now they have the fun task of getting everyone out of Iran without anyone knowing they were ever there. And right then, as they're trying to pack up and get out, the absolute unthinkable happens. Headlights on a deserted road in the middle of nowhere. A civilian bus, just full of regular Iranians, drives right into their secret base. The commandos have to stop the bus, detain everyone, and then, moments later, a fuel tanker comes barreling down the same road. It was turning into a total circus. So now you've got total chaos. It's dark, dust is being kicked up everywhere by the helicopter rotors, and everyone's rushing to get out. And in that confusion, one of the helicopters, trying to lift off, clips one of the C-130 transport planes, a plane loaded with fuel and troops. The impact created a massive, massive fireball that just lit up the entire desert sky. And the human cost was just devastating. 8 American service members, 5 from the Air Force, 3 from the Marine Corps, were killed in that crash and fire. A mission that failed had just become an absolute tragedy. The survivors just had to scramble onto the remaining planes and get the hell out of there, leaving a scene of pure destruction behind them. And the fallout from this failure, man, it would be felt all over the world. It would end a presidency and seal the fate of those 52 hostages. For President Carter, the political fallout was absolutely brutal. He had to go on TV and take full responsibility for the whole disastrous mess. It pretty much crippled his presidency, and it was a huge reason why he lost the 1980 election to Ronald Reagan in a landslide. And the Iranians, they twisted the knife one last time. They kept the hostages for another 270 days, finally letting them go literally minutes after Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president, a final, calculated slap in the face. And you can bet Iran milked this for all it was worth. It was an incredible propaganda victory for them. They brought reporters and cameras out to Desert One to film the wreckage. The sight of those charred American helicopters, just left abandoned in their desert, became this powerful, humiliating symbol for the whole world to see. A superpower defeated. So what's the takeaway here? What do we make of this whole disaster? Was it just a string of unbelievably bad luck? A freak sandstorm? A few random mechanical failures? Or is Operation Eagle Claw just too complicated from the very beginning? A mission so complex, with so many things that had to go right, that it was basically doomed from the start. That's the question historians and military experts are still arguing about to this day.